to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at Exodus chapter 14. God has rescued the Israelites from slavery, and He's given them ordinances to remember what He's done for them. But He's also going to give them one more test before they're home free from the Egyptians. The crisis at the Red Sea is going to test the Israelites' true faithfulness, and it's also going to miraculously display God's sovereignty. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the sons of Israel to turn back and camp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, and you shall camp in front of Baal-zephon, opposite it, by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the sons of Israel, they are wandering aimlessly in the land. The wilderness has shut them in. Thus I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after them. And I will be honored through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord." And they did so. Now, like in the last chapter, God is not instructing the Israelites to take the shortest path to Canaan. He instructs them to turn around, to start traveling in circles around the bank of the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds. The idea is when Pharaoh hears about this meandering, he'll see it as an opportunity for revenge, forgetting all of the plagues that came from the hand of God. Through that desperate attempt at revenge, through his overwhelming draw towards tyranny and oppression, through his direct challenge of the Yahweh God, God is going to bring about Pharaoh's downfall and judge him once and for all. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart toward the people, and they said, "What is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us?" So he made his chariot ready, and he took his people with him, and he took 600 select chariots, and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he chased after the sons of Israel, as the sons of Israel were going out boldly. Then the Egyptians chased after them with all their horses and chariots, and Pharaoh, his horsemen, and his army, and they overtook them camping by the sea, beside Pi-hahiroth, in front of Baal-zephon. The plan works exactly as God said it would, and Pharaoh has a change of heart towards the people. Now before, he let the Israelites go because he feared the Lord, right? He feared what God would do to him if he kept oppressing them. He had the fear of the Lord like the midwives did back in Exodus chapter 1. Yet also like chapter 1, he quickly forgets all that God had shown through those plagues. He commits to living by his own power and his own strength, wanting to abuse the sons of Israel. And here it said simultaneously that Pharaoh hardens his own heart and that God hardens it for him, showing that dual truth of human free will and God's sovereignty existing in tandem. As Pharaoh drew near, the sons of Israel looked, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they became very frightened. So the sons of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you dealt with us in this way, bringing us out into Egypt? Is this not the word that we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, 'Leave us alone so that we may serve the Egyptians'? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." At this point, though, the Israelite people don't feel comforted, right? They are terrified. They're more afraid of Pharaoh than they are confident in God's ability to rescue them and to deliver them. And interestingly, this is the first time the Israelites are mentioning that they wanted to stay in Egypt. We did hear in chapters 5 and 6 that they rejected Moses at first because of how their labor was increased. But we don't get these specific words of not wanting to leave Egypt. Of course they wanted to leave Egypt. They were enslaved. They had just rejected Moses. And in any case, that was definitely not their desire when the plagues were happening, when the people saw how God was moving among them and actively setting them free. And all this shows is how easy it is to abandon faith in hard times, to forget what God did in the good ones. But Moses said to the people, "Do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see them again forever. The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent." Moses promises on behalf of God that not only will God rescue the people from the Egyptians, he will make it so that they will never have to see or worry about them ever again. And God is going to do all of that work by himself. They won't have to fight or yell or work for this deliverance. They just have to remain faithful to God in his instruction. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the sons of Israel to go forward. As for you, lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And the sons of Israel shall go through the midst of the sea on dry land. As for me, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, so that they will go in after them. And I will be honored through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. And then the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, when I am honored through Pharaoh, through his chariots and his horsemen." God predicts how he's going to save Israel and ultimately be honored through all of it. And he gives Moses the instructions that the people are going to have to follow. What God will do for the Israelites and to the Egyptians is going to show that he is a powerful and sovereign God and worthy of eternal worship. The angel of God, who had been going before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. And there was the cloud along with the darkness, yet it gave light at night. Thus the one did not come near the other all night. So that pillar of cloud and fire that God was using to lead the people, it ends up turning around and going behind them, separating the Israelites from the Egyptians. This reinforces that set apartness of God's people. It also comments on that idea that God is the first and the last, leading the way and protecting them from behind. God is everywhere, so following him is trustworthy. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord swept the sea back by a strong east wind all night and turned the sea into dry land, so that the waters were divided. The sons of Israel went through the midst of the sea on the dry land, and the waters were like a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. God splits the sea and miraculously provides an escape for the Israelites. Now notice how there's a strong wind and dry land comes up from the sea and the sea is split, right? These are all images that were used in Genesis 1. It continues showing God's sovereignty, how he uses everything in all of creation to rescue and provide for his people. Then the Egyptians took up the pursuit, and all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen went in after them into the midst of the sea. At the morning watch, the Lord looked down on the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud, and brought the army of the Egyptians into confusion. He caused their chariot wheels to swerve, and he made them drive with difficulty. So the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from Israel, for the Lord is fighting for them against the Egyptians." Now to get to the Israelites, the Egyptians have to cross the Red Sea, and they have to cross through that pillar of cloud and fire. And doing so brings about mass hysteria for the Egyptians. All of a sudden they start crashing their chariots and struggling to control their horses. And it's at this point they remember why they let Israel go in the first place. This God is powerful and sovereign, and he is against us and our oppression of Israel. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may come back over the Egyptians, over their chariots and their horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal state at daybreak, while the Egyptians were fleeing right into it. Then the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, even Pharaoh's entire army that had gone into the sea after them. Not even one of them remained. But the sons of Israel walked on dry land through the midst of the sea, and the waters were like a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Once the Egyptians try to cross that dry land that's splitting the Red Sea, Moses stretches his staff back over the body of water and it collapses in on itself. It's similar to the flood in Genesis 6 and 7, where the waters that he had previously separated to sustain life end up collapsing in on themselves to proclaim judgment. It destroys the oppressive Pharaoh and his armies and rescues the sons of Israel. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. When Israel saw the great power which the Lord had used against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord. They believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. At this point, the Israelites are in awe of how God has rescued them, and they are wholeheartedly following him and his servant Moses. Though they also were just a few days ago when they were leaving for Passover. But we saw how that faithfulness dipped in those hard times in between. Will God's deliverance through the Red Sea mean lasting faithfulness for Israel? We'll see as Exodus continues to unfurl, but for now, we see that one of the most famous stories in the Bible reminds us of the sovereign God of Genesis 1, and also the coming judgment for all the world. God will destroy all those powers of death and tyranny and destruction and oppression, but he will rescue his people who are marked by covenant faithfulness. We also see, though, that it's hard to be faithful all the time. It's easier when we feel like we can see God moving, when we feel like we know what's going on. But when obeying God feels like walking in circles or even facing suffering from the rest of the world, will we be faithful then? Thanks for watching 1189. I hope you have a good day, and God bless.